Okay.
What we're going to do in this session, we're going to make this a little bit more interactive. I'm going to break us into small groups. But first of all, we're going to introduce an idea that we've got about how to create the possibility for people to know each other and to put the relationships between us at the forefront, and to see how we can develop together a kind of vision. It all sounds very mystical, doesn't it? I mean, yeah. And these wonderful people here work in Bethlehem Psychiatric Hospital in the West Bank, and we worked with them in February last year. And I think at this time they hadn't been paid for 6 months because the Israelis were holding on to the taxes, so the ministry didn't have any money. And it's just two things really, one of which is an amazing commitment. They're actually doing pretty much the same thing as we're doing here. Exactly the same process of actually trying to work together to think about new ways and new ways of actually engaging with the people that they work with and the families and the wider community. And the thing is, I mean, one of the things is, of course, they've got far less resources than we have. So one of the things I think resources sometimes becomes an excuse not to do something, when actually there's people with far less resources than we've got and they're still busy getting on with it. So I think that's, for me, that's the kind of message of hope. And the fact it was Bethlehem, I think is quite interesting too. The fact they've got a psychiatric hospital in Bethlehem is even more amazing to me. Right, okay. John, you want to take over?
Yeah. So just give us some outline of some of the work that we've been doing. Okay, and we've been doing some of the work has been around some learning sets, and with the learning sets, we've been we started off with similar activities as here and events as here. We get a group of people that have some concerns and some aspirations, and get together to sort of develop an approach of how we can change and how we can develop services into services that recognise the importance of whole life, whole person, and the need to change systems, that the system isn't working and we can't afford it. And so one of the ways in which we do it, we've developed some learning sets. And the learning sets, of course, we've had them with people from a variety of different backgrounds in each of the sets. It's always in co-production. We always have people that have lived experience involved at every stage. Families, friends are involved as well. Community services, some of the significant inputs we've had have come from the police. Without a doubt, there's some great examples of some of the comments that the police have made that have been supported by service users about how they perceive services. That's led to some real, very, very good discussions and developments because of some of the comments that people have said about police involvement and some of the comments the police have made. But also faith groups. We always have people from mental health services or health services, social care, and other community organisations and groups. So it's a real mixture. And what we're doing is we're setting up a process where we can start to critically reflect what's currently happening, but also a process where it's recognising the good practice as well and building upon the good practice. We recently did some work in Serbia, and the information we had about the services was really very negative. Okay? When we asked the questions when we started off, what are you doing, what are you proud of, we were knocked out by some of the services that people were developing, some of the changes they were doing against real obstacles, like if you go against the system, you lose your job. And also the amount of control certain aspects of the system had on people and their practice. So we looked at, it's an interactive process. It's a process of critical reflection, experiential learning over time. It's about developing the relationships within the group. It's the most important thing, because what we're doing is we want people to be able to trust one another. And those relationships are important for people to be open about their practice and their experiences without feeling any sense of restriction on that. And so once we've developed that, we've had some real, very, very, very open discussions around what's currently happening and what people want to see happening. We're working on real whole life needs and interests of service users and family members. They're sorted by using knowledge and skills of ourselves as facilitators. Our role is just facilitation. We do bring experience from places we've worked at around the world and in the UK. Okay, and we're looking at questioning. You know, what is happening? What needs to change? Yeah, but also we're looking at what's behind your practice. You know, what's behind your beliefs? What's driving you? And so to get that level of trust is really important for people to start to look at what's driving their practice and their beliefs. Okay. So that's what we do, and we challenge familiar, outdated concepts and ideas. Okay. And some of the responses have been just so good, you know, in that we've developed programs in certain health authorities that for 5-year programs they've engaged with. Like I told you earlier, the Welsh Government are looking at us rolling out this program throughout Wales, and we've got programs like all over the place, which is about getting people to reflect on their thinking and their practice, and then looking at how we can change it.
Mm-hmm. So we want to use the slide for a while. You wonder what is next. Sort of winging it. Okay, long way. Yeah. So we understand. I mean, one of the agendas around, and this is very much for everybody, is because of the time slots and the amount of time available. If I go and see a general practitioner and I tell him I'm lethargic, I'm feeling hopeless, I'm not sleeping at night, I'm worrying and worrying over things, and I say 5 things, it's quite likely that that doctor will come to the conclusion that I'm suffering from depression, just on those things alone. And because he hasn't got much time, or she hasn't got much time, I tick the boxes, and that may lead to a treatment for depression. If I'm lucky, it might be exercise, or it might be antidepressants, you know, a range of things. If the doctor had more time to hear the story that lay behind those feelings, which may be, I've got a teenage daughter, not seen her for a week, my relationship with my wife is really under pressure at the moment, I think I'm going to be losing my job. It gives you a completely different context to the conversation. So what we're trying to do is move away a little bit from pathologising human distress and turning it into various symptoms and illnesses, and looking at the bigger picture, the whole life of the person. So we want people to have the opportunity to have that person they can talk to who will listen to them and let them tell them their story with a piece of tape over your mouth. So they've had a chance to say what it is has happened and what they are saying has happened without us thinking, oh right, that's going to be, you know, the pressure of that form-filling culture that we live in to make it, you know, into something which we can then provide help for, maybe, as somebody pointed out, and then decide, well, you're not actually the priority and you're going to be sent back to your GP, so the whole thing's been a waste of time. But telling your story in itself is very cathartic. Having the opportunity in itself helps people and lifts people's mood. The fact that somebody's been willing to listen to them and hear what they've got to say. It also enables you to uncover the deeper and whole life perspectives, you know, the domain things. I know I haven't paid my rent for 3 weeks. Well, that's going to make you anxious. I wouldn't sleep either if I was in that situation. And if I didn't know where my daughter was, it'd be killing me. You know, so those things, you know, all relate, and together, you know, we might be able to begin to find ways of resolving those issues. But the trouble is a very human reaction is going to freeze mentality, and you know, as you know, fight, flight, and freeze. You know, there's 3 Fs, and a lot of in that place, it seems like you can't do anything, and then we need the support of others to help us move on and to show and to say, hey, you know, like, you have strengths. It's clear. It's evident. Look at what you did in the past, and let's rediscover that person. So you know, it's, you know, they're big words, but we need to know. We need to feel that people can reflect and determine for themselves. It's the only way to get on with your life. Is, you know, you can't do that if you're always dependent on medication, for instance. You know, if that's a long-term part of your life, it actually restricts your life as well. I think somebody actually mentioned that somewhere. But the whole thing about being on antidepressants for such a long time and not having that reviewed. And then there's the ways in which different places and different communities can resolve that. I mean, I was thinking about, where I live in Short, there's a very lively Catholic church with a big congregation. I guarantee there's quite a few people there suffering. So working with the church to actually establish a group within the church which actually is looking at worry and anxiety and distress, and actually thinking about ways you can do it, it's a perfect place to do it. One, it's not stigmatised. People are much more anxious about going to somewhere which is identified as psychiatric, because you can be going in there for all sorts of reasons. And also, there's a big part of people's life which is spiritual and about their faith, and it's increasingly being appreciated by psychiatry. This is the case, but finding ways of engaging with it is actually difficult. But they're out there. The opportunities are there. So we know that even people who are not, it's quite interesting actually, there's a number of people who go to psychiatry and decide, this is not for me, and withdraw from it from the first instance. So they go along and say, whoa, I'm not getting involved in that, and they live and suffer with their problems without getting involved in psychiatry. So for me, it's not, because I'm a service user, and I'm not a service user, actually the circumstances and situations be very, very similar, but for whatever reason, that person may have support around them, or they've never got to that crisis point, or they've never picked up that phone, or whatever reason they're not involved in services, but the issues and the circumstances can be very similar. But the point is we know that this thing about, if you create resilient, supportive communities, and the more connectiveness there is between communities and understanding what the community